I'd like to welcome to Planet Waves FM and Planet Waves TV, Michael Stutz in Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Good to be
really happy to have you here.
Absolutely. So,
Michael, you're the author of a three-part novel.
Yes.
Lord of the Rings, Circuits of the Wind, a kind of digital odyssey about a topic that got my attention instantaneously when I somehow, however I found you, but the kind of contacts in the wind of the internet, about the earliest days of the internet, before the commercial internet, in any form, before anybody thought there was ever going to be an ad, really before there were even pictures. I call it Internet 0.0 in the early 1990s.
Right.
All right, I'm getting the connection is unstable warning.
Okay.
But I'm going in through Ethernet, so I don't know what the issue is, and the modem is right there. But anyway, so I would absolutely love to hear about this and hear about the themes of your novel and the zeitgeist that it's portraying.
Sure.
I've read enough and heard enough, like I've heard some of the readings of it to get a sense of the excitement of this frontier opening up.
Right. Right. And that's exactly what the book's about. They called it the electronic frontier, the computer underground. But if you were there, if you were on the net back in the 90s or even in the 80s, because things were going on in the 80s with home computers. And, when we were kids dialing up on landlines, putting your phone actually into an acoustic coupler or using a modem, and then just getting a connection from somewhere else far away. That's what it was all about. And even though it was like the baby boomer generation and the greatest generation, all these people before, they built the net. They really did. But the net generation it belonged to Generation X, the people who kind of came of age in the 90s and saw this as it was exploding. As the World Wide Web came out and all this other stuff. And being there on that edge was an excitement that it's gone from the world now, but I knew I had to capture that feeling.
Yes, it has gone from the world. It's largely been consumed by essentially money and power, an ethos of the internet that's now all about money and power.
Right.
Whereas before, no, it was about communication and it was a sense of adventure. So could you tell us, most people have no concept of what this was like, things like Usenet.
Right.
And the people up all night long, your character, who I assume has something in common with you, capturing all of these threads and discussions. We're talking about the age before email here.
Right. And yeah, really with BBSs going back into say 1987, and you're calling up a bulletin board system. You're a kid in your parents' bedroom or your parents' house in your bedroom, and you're calling some other kid in their bedroom in their parents' house. And they've got a Commodore 64 or whatever, an Apple IIe, and you're connecting on there and you're reading messages that were left asynchronously. Someone else had called an hour before and left a message, and now you're calling up and you're replying to that. Yeah. And then someone's going to call up a half hour later and reply to that, and you'll go after school the next day and you'll dial it back up and you'll reach this kid's computer in his bedroom at his parents' house and you'll see what everybody else had to say.
So this is not real-time communication.
Yes, absolutely. And then you get into Usenet, and by the crack of the 90s, it was all about really the quote unquote internet. And certainly by mid 94, you're accessing the web through this. There's a program called Links, and it was all text based. There was no graphics or anything, but you would just see a screen of text on your computer. And this is the World Wide Web. Wow, what's this? Yeah,
you're talking about, this goes way back before the term World Wide Web and the concept of an HTML server where the files are accessible and sitting there, and before the @ symbol was common. All of that, long before all of that.
Right. And that was a totally different world. And it was so exciting. If you were like a kid just in that underground, like most of the kids you went to school with were not part of it. But there's always, in every high school across the nation, there was always a handful of people who were in on this. they were hackers, crackers, outcasts, whatever they were, but they were seeing this thing explode. And on college campuses, kids were seeing this explode and connecting to it. And it was a different world, and it was so exciting. And to me, I thought, well, this was such a fascinating story. I have to write about the feeling, the excitement, but also the potential you had, what the internet could be, where we were going with this. Like, I thought there was a time in the early 90s, I thought, give it a few years, we're going to pave over all the highways with grass. I mean, there was going to be some kind of crazy revolution. I mean, of course, you're 20 years old, you're idealistic, naive as all heck, and you don't really know what's going on, but you have this excitement of, gosh, the adults don't know this. Like, we had this one thing we thought about, where like there was this guy named Jorn Barger, he was an old guy, like an old hippie kind of guy, and he wrote all his theories out on the internet. He invented the weblog, and this was back in 97. I saw it happening because I would always go to his site, and I had one of the first weblogs back then. I mean, weblogs are forgotten, but there was a
That's, by the way, the formal name for the blog.
Yeah.
The worst name ever, weblog. That's cool. Blog.
Yeah, he called it a weblog, but yeah, basically then people call it blog. But people would say, don't trust anyone on the internet over 30 except for Jorn Barger, because people trusted, oh, this guy's cool, he's inventing all this stuff.
Is he still around?
Yeah, it's kind of obscure. He's a little bit offline now, but I think I know where to find him if you want to. He's kind of hard to reach.
We'd love to talk to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just saying.
Right.
Do you mind telling me what year you were born?
71.
71. Okay, so you're 5 years younger than me. So that's a long time in internet time.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've been, as of this summer, sitting at a computer writing for 40 years. But the computers were not networked. The first ones I was on were not networked. Mm-hmm. It was just a local system. So a whole other thing. I had no concept that all this was going on. And this is in the mid 80s. I don't get a job where computers are networked by dial-up modem to each other until 87. Mm-hmm. And still the concept of the web, I had no idea that there was like BitNet going on, and ARPANET and Usenet and all of these things. So why don't you keep going, please, with the feeling of that time, and we'll be a little bit nostalgic here, and then we can take it into the early days of Delphi, and then AOL, CompuServe, and then people start getting websites and email addresses.
Right.
But this is in the prehistory. But before you do that, I want to just share my screen for a second and show you something really exciting.
Okay.
That you may appreciate. Web reaction. How do I more share screen? All right. What are you looking at here? Let me go full screen on this. Sorry, I just stepped on my joke.
Internet archaeologist Dr. Maxwell Fry stumbled upon the perfectly preserved ruins of an online community called Friendster. Dr. Fry, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Dr. Fry, tell us about this amazing discovery of yours.
Well, it was called Friendster, and at its peak, it was a vibrant social network with more than 50 million members.
50 million?
That's right. But then, out of the blue, the civilization just ended, and the site was completely abandoned. One day, Friendster users were posting a seemingly endless stream of bulletins about awesome parties and cool shows, and then nothing.
That is
Total
so
silence.
eerie.
Today, the ruins of the site remain perfectly preserved at the time of Friendster's demise, sometime around mid to late 2004 AD.
Their lives
2004 AD.
complete stop, like a fly trapped in amber.
Okay, so enough of that silliness. This, of course, is much later. How do I unshare? Your screen sharing. Stop share. All right. Yeah, so they're even making fun of Friendster, right? We are so far from any of this. Any of this.
Yeah.
Okay, so take us back way to the beginning, the dawn of time, Cro-Magnon. You're dragging your girlfriend around by the hair. Well, what's going on?
In the opening scene of the book, I start with the main character, the protagonist and hero, Raymond Valentine, his first beginning. There's this block on the wall of the kitchen, and it's making a noise like one of his toys, and this lady, his mom, picks up this handle and talks into it. It's the phone. And that's, all of that stuff. The phone was really back then, actually in the 80s, like being a kid, learning about the phone system, that was the biggest computer network at the time, the phone system. And they called them phone freaks, people who would hack the phones and cruise on out and connect to all kinds of systems all over the world through the telephone. So
you mean dialing up, using dial-up?
Yeah, dialing up, and you can connect. There were like chat lines where you could talk to other people and meet other phone freaks, people who were also into, connecting and getting free long distance calls. That was like a teenage rite of passage back then.
And security had to be close to zero.
Well, it did, but things would change. There was something called Crossbar, which was a kind of phone switching system that was a series of bars. It looked like a grid that they would cross over, and there were ways to hack into them. And then in the 80s, they went into the mid 80s ESS, electronic switching systems, which was all computerized. That was harder, but if you knew what computer to dial up on and get access to the actual mainframe that's running this, well, then you can control a lot. So there was a lot of exciting stuff back then.
So in a way, hacking and programming were inherent. I mean, these were the people that Bill Gates referred to in the Gates wine letter, hobbyists. Most people don't even have any idea the Gates wine letter even exists. You know what I'm talking about, right? Where he complains that people are hacking, they're copying his software, and the Gates wine. We'll get into that a little bit later. It's called the Gates wine. WHINE, the Gates wine.
Absolutely.
If I could only have 10 programmers,
right,
and all you people are slowing me down. This is way before that. So you're playing with the phone system. You're getting it like MCI, and like free long distance cards. Basically, you're kind of hacking long distance cards when long distance was charged by the minute at that time.
Right. And it was expensive, but kids would find ways to dial. Then they dial BBSs across the country, and there was a network of them. And then there were these hacker groups, and you'd be members of a group, and you'd have, you'd go by your handle. And so it was like this teenage world of like kids, computer nerds really, but like they're accessing all this. And that's exciting on one level, but to me also, it's just the feeling looking back on it. I guess part of it is definitely nostalgia, because what is looking in the rearview mirror? It's absolute nostalgia. But it's also, I feel like it's important to develop basically a journalistic account of what happened and how it felt. And that's the most important thing. How did it feel to be a kid and seeing the net explode when the adults had no clue that this was coming?
Right. Did you have a clue what was coming?
Absolutely.
Like what was coming next?
Absolutely.
That it was going to turn into, Bill Gates' world and
No, actually, Linux, in 1991, when Linux came out, and that took the whole world of the so-called free software movement into a bigger dimension. Richard Stallman in 84, he started what was called the GNU project. He was like, we're going to take this mainframe system, Unix, we're going to create a new version of it, something that's just like it, but the software is free. You can read the source code, you can make changes to it. Right. Everyone can access it. And my contribution back then, and it's crazy because I was a kid. It was like in the 90s. And it seemed in 94 when I did this, it seemed like Richard Stallman was like, he wasn't my parents' age, but he was an old guy, and he was probably only in his 30s, at the time. But it seemed like ancient history. Oh my gosh, 1984. But I said, okay, we're going to take this copyleft, which was what it was called, this way to release software, and we're going to apply it to the things that interested me the most, art. We're going to apply it to writing, all forms of writing, images, music. And so I started popularizing that, and that eventually led to like the Creative Commons, which everybody knows, so-called open content, and Wikipedia, of course.
And the well is also going on.
Whole Earth Electronic Link, out of San Francisco. That was definitely a.
Well, that's a very early. That's kind of in the proto-commercial internet.
Right.
But people still have their well.com addresses now, don't they?
I bet they do. I haven't seen one in quite a while.
Yeah.
I did write to Stephen Levy. I don't know, maybe it was about 5 years ago. I think he had a well account at the time. I don't remember, but that was from the old days. And they went through a lot. I'm sure well.com is still around. Got to admit, I haven't visited that in quite a long time, but that was an early online community.
Yeah, and we're still that's still past this dawn you're talking about, where essentially teenagers are kind of splunking around this network with hardly anybody else in there, even hardly anybody else knowing. It's like you guys and then phone engineers.
Yeah,
basically.
right.
Like
exactly.
AT&T and MCI engineers and a bunch of kids.
Yeah, it
kind
really
of riding the lightning, riding the wires. Basically.
Absolutely.
Okay, it never even occurred to me that this was there, because I come in internet years much later, much later in the very early commercial internet. But I had heard of things like BitNet.
Right. And Usenet. Usenet was great. I still kind of miss it in a way, but it's like after you've lived enough years and all that, you come to a point where you're like, okay, I've had enough. That's why, like, I never went on Facebook. I never bothered with it. And then even Twitter, although I kind of dabbled in it, I'm like, gosh, I lived through this as a teenager. I don't want to go through it again. I'm kind of done with it. And that's sort of the whole world of social media. Although Substack is different. It does seem like that's where we met. And it seems like it is really good for writers and it's really good for readers, and it is connecting both of them together. So I hope it lasts a good long time.
Well, it lasts a good long time as a mostly free place for publishing.
Absolutely.
We can get into that. I've been trying to develop something like that for my own company for a long time. It's very hard. As the founder of Substack said, it's very hard to get this right.
Sure.
But they seem to have. So when is I'm just imagining these kids up late at night and you're posting to BBSs and probably making bizarre discoveries and splunking your way into university computer systems, probably, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember I was like 13 years old, and I remember connecting to Dartmouth University. The computer system at the time, it was called RSTSE. It was RSTS/E, which was in the 80s. It was a time sharing system, which meant you put your job into the computer and everybody else would, and it would kind of share time between jobs. But they had developed like this chat, and all these kids were talking to each other on there. And
job really as in like running a program.
Yeah.
A cron job or something like this.
Yeah, exactly. Like a cron job. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, a lot of these things still exist in the deep background.
Absolutely.
Cron jobs are very important.
Right. They are.
If your website's going insane, it might be a cron job that's gone out of control. So when is your first sign that things are going to be commercial?
So I started in the late 90s. I started writing for Wired.com, and that was exciting. And that was commercial. But when
Wired.com, were you in the magazine?
Yeah, I wrote for the magazine a little bit, but I was mostly the .com guy. I was like one of the tech writers. So I'd write about everything that was happening every day on the net. And it was commercial then, although reading Wired.com in 97, if you were like one of our readers, you were still pretty much ahead of the curve, because that was still a time when not everybody was even online.
Right.
But it was that first .com crash at the turn of the century. That's when I really saw, okay, things are going to get ugly, and they're just not going to get better.
You mean the crash in 01?
Well, it was really before that. Probably looking back, it might have even been late 99, but it was the so-called .com bubble. And I know.
I think 99. Yes. Yeah. Way before 9/11. Yeah, I think it was 99.
Right. And that was, to me, it was like, okay, the 90s are over. Yeah. And I don't know what's coming next, but whatever it is, it's not that utopia that we thought, just a few years earlier.
Yeah, I didn't, Google starts in 98, same year Planet Waves starts.
Oh, nice.
I think they were on like 6 months ahead of me. Mm-hmm. They grew a little quicker.
I knew those guys back then. Yeah, I complained to them with the design. Everybody knows Google, where it's written in all different colors.
Yeah.
They adopted that kind of late. They had an
GOOGLE.
Yeah,
I couldn't find that, and I thought, what a joke. The first time I saw that, I thought, just from the art, and I cannot find that original graphic. It is.
I've got a screenshot somewhere.
Great! It is so scrubbed. I've gone looking for it, and I remember looking at it the first time, thinking, "You got to be kidding! I'm sticking to Yahoo." But they had a little help growing into what they were. They're being helped by intelligence agencies to build this infrastructure. Those guys had help. They did not do that on their own. That was federally funded. It's the perfect, basically, spyware Everybody's jumping in.
Yeah, except for me. I was talking to them about their design. I'm like, why didn't I get in on this? And same with Yahoo. I saw the two guys, one guy, his name was Jerry. Well, I saw them basically building it. There was something called DMAS. It was an open source directory, and they kind of built this Yahoo off of it, yahoo.com. And I remember talking to them as they're building it and commenting, but I didn't ask for a job. And I thought, I was too cool to work for something like that. So I didn't get in on that. I didn't get in on Amazon either. And Jeff Bezos, he was setting it up for a while. I think he was sharing space with some, it was some relation to Wired. He had like a desk space somewhere. But I remember, and I had buddies out in Seattle who he passed it up too. He was a programmer, but it was like 95 summer. It was July 95 was the first Amazon.com when they went live. And I remember this is horrible because we use Amazon every day, of course. But I remember thinking it was really lame because I was really into books, and it was all just like the top 40 brand new books, the kind of political books, stuff I'm not interested in.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going to buy these books,
Right. But this is, is it really true that it starts in a garage?
Yeah, in a lot of cases with Amazon, I'm pretty sure he shared offices with someone I knew at Wired. He just, they gave him a table somewhere or something,
right.
But whatever it was.
And he's filling the orders out of his garage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And it was like, and it was not next day delivery. It was not 2-day delivery.
Oh, nothing like this. No, it was an ordinary mail order bookstore.
Right.
Only you bought it on the internet. We put a credit card in and bought it. That was taking money was the big thing. One click. They knew how to get the money out of your credit card. They put all their energy into that.
Right.
And then expanded. It was a big deal then. I could not have imagined basically taking over the world. You see whole trains go by. You see the trains go by, Amazon trains. Do you have that there?
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, here, I'll catch video of that. Trains with like 20 cars with Amazon and the smile.
That's funny.
God knows how they got there, but you kind of have to hand it to them. These people had a vision. They were ambitious. They had drive. But let's stick with your story. As this all is fermenting, this like massive commercial boom on the internet, what are you thinking around the time of the .com crash, the one in 99? Right.
Well, I was getting kind of cynical, but I was still kind of a kid. And I was thinking about, well, what am I going to do? What's next? Here's the year 2000. This is the future that we've all been waiting for. And really what happened was it's like the end of this book. This book ends kind of at the dawn of the new millennium. And it's a coming of age novel. This kid growing up on the internet, so that you would call it a Bildungsroman, but it's also a Künstlerroman, the story of someone becoming an artist. And I just thought there's something there's a lot of things I could do. I could be a programmer. I could, do this, do that. But there's a story I have to tell, and I have to devote my life to writing and to creating.
So you really went. Hold on, let's get a little light on the subject here. Sure. You really have devoted decades to this novel.
Absolutely. Well, not to yeah, actually this novel, Circuits of the Wind, it started, I wrote another book first called My Virtual Life. And it literally was, I was trying to document really every keyboard click and clack and mouse click I ever made, just really start from the beginning and think about what I had just been through, living through this. And that novel, it's 1.2 million words. So it's enormous. And yeah, it's a big one. I've written a lot of books.
But that's almost the kind of book where you could take a piece of it and excerpt it into a novella.
Absolutely. Yes. And I've done that.
Where it's a little, and it's intriguing that it's a sample, that it might be a 12,000 word sample of a 1,000,000 word body of work.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Kind of very Tolkien-esque, like there's a legendarium behind it.
Right. Right. And I was discovering what kind of writer am I? I was lucky enough. I knew Allan Ginsberg. He was an early teacher of mine. And because I was so enthralled with the Beat Generation.
Did you ever know him?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How did you meet him? Where did you meet him? I met him once. It was wonderful.
Okay.
I met him in Naropa once, and I just got to kind of cozy up to him and give him a squeeze and thank him and tell him I loved him.
When in Naropa?
Oh man, this had to be around 2000 maybe.
Okay.
Would have
been earlier.
And I was there for an Anne Waldman reading, so I met Anne Waldman too.
Yeah, I met her.
Go, but tell me about your relationship to Ginsberg, because I know your relation to the beat poets and their ethos of preserving history, right? That's
Absolutely.
They're writing contemporaneous stuff. They want you to feel like what it was now for them.
Right. Yeah. Sort of capturing the past for the future. But I got really enthralled with all the beats, in the 90s, and definitely Jack Kerouac, who just felt like a brother to me, everything about him. And it just kind of clicked. Ginsberg came to town, and I went to his reading, met him, and there was just something that clicked, and we started corresponding. And I would send him my writing, and he would proof it and stuff and send things back to me and encourage me. I just started following him around. He'd go to
you'd find this is great. This is great.
Went to New York City to a beat convention there, where I met Hunter Thompson and a bunch of other beats, which was great. And he'd go to Ann Arbor a lot because he was very involved with the Shambhala Center there. He was really into Buddhism. And so I spent time there. That was only a few hours away. And of course, Naropa. Did I get kicked out of there? Basically, I mean, I got in a fight with him there, and it was a lot of drama. But
you got a fight with Allan there?
Yeah.
In an argument?
It was crazy. I mean, we made up afterward, but yeah, I was just so determined to write this story of the net generation. I even told him one night, I'm like, the beat generation, the night of the Woofians, they had something in the late 40s, William S. Burroughs, Ginsberg, John Cleland Holmes, and Jack Kerouac. They called it the Night of the Woofians, where John Cleland Holmes and Kerouac were kind of like these Woofians. They were after Thomas Wolfe, that sort of long rolling style of American prose. And that's definitely my feeling, or kind of to the core of what I write and how I write. And I told Ginsberg that, and I'm like, that's the spirit, and that's what I intend on doing. And he literally passed the torch to me. He's like, well, here's the torch of the beat generation. And he did one of these to me, and I'm carrying it ever since. I'm telling you.
And here we are, right on Planet Waves TV. It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. It was legitimate.
So the whole thing leads right to this interview. That's amazing. I must get your birth information when we're off screen, if you don't mind. I'd like to see your chart and plot it against this collection of charts. I'm an astrologer, by the way. My viewers know that, yours don't. Of these early digital incidents. Sputnik, I consider one. ARPANET.
Absolutely.
The iPhone introduced. I've got the chart for when Jobs walked out on the stage and said, "Here's an iPhone."
Wow.
For the first time. You obviously you work for Wired. You've heard of this guy Marshall McLuhan?
Yeah, I've heard of him. He was the patron saint of the magazine.
Wired is single-handedly responsible for the McLuhan revival.
I believe that.
By doing that, by putting his name in the masthead,
Yes.
every issue of really what was at the time the hippest magazine of them all. I thought,
definitely.
Seeing the future, patron saint Marshall McLuhan. What were you thinking about his approach to conceiving of media environments? I mean, were you aware of that?
He was new to me in the late 90s. At the time, I was enthralled with another great 20th century thinker, R. Buckminster Fuller.
Sure.
And Bucky and McLuhan, of course, they were friends and accomplices in many things. But McLuhan, I just ate that up because it makes so much sense. And I do have some commonalities with the man as well. And so I'm actually very proud of his work, with what he's done. And with how it continues to be reappreciated, and that reappreciation is almost fractal. It's almost self-referential, which I think is just perfect for him, because
but largely misunderstood. I mean, I've worked very carefully to make sure that I understand that it's about environments. It's not about the content. You have to really maintain almost a yogic discipline of not letting yourself be influenced by the content, and you keep wanting to go back to it. You keep wanting to go back to, my God, this ad is so sexist or something like that. Nah, that gets scaled down to like 1% of the 99, or it's. I think there's a lot of room. Maybe we can do this to talk about the way different environments support different vibration tones of the content, and different environments support different, I'm conscious of how I express myself in different environments, whether it's video, whether it's audio. I'm a different person, and just a little bit different person in those environments. And I have tried to pick the brains of Andrew and Eric McLuhan as much as possible, and Mark Stallman. I don't know if he's related to the Stallman. Did you know, was Mark related to the guy who was?
No, their names are spelled differently, but he's, I believe, part of like edge.org, and he's involved in a lot of interesting cultural.
Center for Digital Life.
Yes, Center for Digital Life. Yes, exactly.
Yep. To get them to give me more information about how to work my content into the different environments for maximum influence. Basically, I've had to go from the theory, applying it to figuring it out myself.
Right.
Because it's the thing that nobody really wants to talk about. They really don't. There's a few things they don't want to talk about. That's one of them. You know, they like to go from the environment backward, not from the content forward. But that's the discipline of McLuhan, is to study environments. And what you're describing in your novel is you were thrust into an environment.
Yes, right, exactly.
And it felt like
environment. Yes.
A surrounds, a space.
Right. Like a fish into water, discovering water for the first time.
Yeah, dropped into the water. That's kind of how I felt. It was I'm getting in. I mean, I first posted my own website with my own hands in 1998, December 1998. I got an FTP program, and I got some $48 program that became something else, $50. And I'm like cobbling it together. I still couldn't see how to make a publication out of it. It really threw me because I'm a print designer. But still, my experience in that was like a zero gravity. It was almost like being thrust into a zero gravity environment and floating around in space.
Right. You are in a new world.
A whole new, it was a dimension. And I think of the internet as a dimension, as a synthetic astral plane.
Absolutely. It's a place.
Absolutely is that.
Cyberspace is a place. Yes.
It's a place. And it is like kind of located between the earth and the astral plane. And it has many of the properties of the astral plane, including extreme polarization. That's one of the properties of the astral. You know, when things are polarized and it's really, really, really bad or really, really good, and, you know, not a lot of in between. That's the astral plane. But the weird thing about the digital astral plane is, unlike in a dream, you can pretty dependably find your way back to someplace. Usually the astral plane doesn't usually have that unless you're a really good lucid dreamer.
Oh, okay. Right.
But you can hack you have your history and you remember things and you retrace your search, and, you know, you can get back to your house basically.
And it is like a dream world, and it's so funny you say that. One of my unpublished books is a book of dreams that I would do diligently every morning, write my dreams out, and it's over 1 million words. And I don't think anyone's written that much about.
So you've taken Henry Mill's advice a lot of times, that you find your voice after you've written 1 million words.
You have to. You really do. You have to write even a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, you find your voice over and over again, and but that's pretty prolific. I mean, how are your wrists?
They're good. I mean, I do a lot of exercise and all that, and I collect vintage keyboards because you can type so much faster. I've got some old compacts from the early 80s, and man, I can get, legitimately at least 80 words per minute or more. And it's funny, Ginsberg said too, something that just hit me now about coming to get your own voice, you have to forget about having it heard. So that kind of calmness of, hey, I've written this book. It doesn't have to come out right now, but I've written it.
Oh, worrying about what other people think? Nah, I don't worry about that. All I want to do is be clear. As far as I get is making sure that on the page, my meaning is clear to me what I'm saying.
Correct.
I'm not thinking, I'm not. Yeah, no writer should worry about what someone's going to think. You just have to have fun and make sure you're being true to your idea.
Absolutely. And if you think about that audience, sometimes it could be the hardest thing in the world. Because we are in the global village. And to really be a great writer, looking at it even from a Buddhistic view, you have to be the village idiot. You have to be willing to do that. You know?
Yeah. And McLuhan said the global village is not a friendly place. He said, go to small towns. They are not friendly places. People are all up each other's business, and they're judging each other, and they're outcasting each other, shunning each other. And it's really a small town mentality. The global village was the radio. He described that that was radio, and it would only became confused with the internet when the modem company rather brilliantly took the name Global Village, which also was a monument to McLuhan.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great name for a modem. I loved having a Global Village modem. It was the fucking coolest modem there. Now I have this bullshit from the phone company that I just, it's just so damn ugly. I want to hide it, but they were nice looking. It was like 5,000 baud. I was like, whoa, 5,000 baud. That was like I had made the big time with 5,000 baud.
Yeah.
I had a net experience, I'm selling myself short. My company that started in 1989, Student Leader News Service, which was a project that networked student newspapers around the state of New York and the city of New York into a kind of a news sharing service. Mm-hmm. And the people in my home office in New Paltz, we were good writers. We were dedicated journalists, man. We would sweat journalism. We fucking loved it. But then we networked all the papers around the state, and we made all these friends. We drove my little Nissan crazy around the state, going to all these campuses down in the city, and we networked. We got everybody linked up, and we were mostly faxing and mailing.
Wow.
We would mail out on Friday afternoon. It would arrive on Monday morning. But for the big papers, we would fax them. They would retype it. But we had a BBS in 1990. This guy, Jesse, I'll think of his name. Really, the guy who turned me on to Burning Man, of course. Programmed we had a Mac Classic. You didn't need much. And you could log into our BBS. I believe the phone number was 914-255-2626. And it was our modem line. We called it our modem line. So I now get to backdate my presence on the internet by several years, almost a decade.
Wow.
That's cool. But only one school did it. But still, we're like, SUNY Plattsburgh, they downloaded this week's articles. There was one freak at SUNY Plattsburgh in 1990 who was like, yeah, this is cool. And we had an ad with little folders, I still have the set. I'll send it to you.
That's funny. Yes. SUNY there were a lot of online modem things connected onto different SUNY projects and stuff.
Well, we didn't really get near them, and it never occurred to me to go further with this than just distributing the content of my news service. I was so busy. I was balls to the wall doing the stories I was doing. So I didn't have a lot of time to imagine the network itself. I was very focused on my content. Mm-hmm. But, everybody else was, building away. Were you a fan of the magazine? You must have been.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
Okay.
It was the end of the magazine era. That was the last gasp of magazines. I mean, like, if you think about it now, I mean, they're still technically publishing magazines out there, but who reads?
There's nothing. I haven't had a new magazine gig in a long time as a horoscope writer. I mean, and it was my absolute goal to get into those books. And I got into maybe about 15, 20 of them. But by 2014, 2015, they were irrelevant and fewer and further between. I mean, my horoscope was by far the best writing in those. I'm not bragging. They were so bad. Edited by girls who were, so little their feet didn't even touch the ground. I would imagine them swinging their feet from the desk chair, so they could be high enough to type. I'm like, okay, I can't believe I'm being edited by this person who I wouldn't even take as an intern at the magazines I've been the editor of. But whatever. Okay, she's never heard of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Okay, whatever. I'll take it out. So the reason I ask about Wired is there's an issue that I'm trying to find.
Okay.
And I've gone so far as to buy a random box of old editions to see if maybe it was in there. And I guess I might have to do that like 100 times. And we could not find it in the search of the covers. I might have even called the library at Wired. Here's what it was. It was a beaker full of injectable nanoplasma. And it was like a beaker. Let me get a Sharpie.
And this was on the cover?
Yeah. It was probably around 2002. It was just after 9/11. It was like a beaker of plasma with a like a glass wand in it, I think. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, liquid computing.
Oh, yeah, right.
Liquid computing. And I get so caught up in journalism and horoscopes and so forth that I haven't developed my fiction as much as I want. But I had a whole scenario that pretty much the late episodes of The Girlfriend Experience were as if they were reading my mind.
Okay.
Of the fusion of biological humans and the singularity point stuff. And it was with the nanoplasma, and they were reading the minds of these women. Always, of course, involves sex. That's The Girlfriend Experience. The girl's getting dementia. She gets the chip put in her head that can capture all of her memories. But I'm not connecting it to a sickness. I'm connecting it to how do you create for a sex bot, how do you create plausible emotions? Mm-hmm. And it would be injectable plasma to read the mind and feelings of these women. But it takes a dystopian turn when the designers realize you don't need it to be realistic. Nobody cares. It's all projection. Forget the personality. Who cares about the personality? That's just a big waste of time. And so, which is kind of true for a lot of people. Right. So that was the direction that cover of Wired took me in that direction.
Gosh, and now it's gone, and
I can't find it. No, but I know it existed, and people doubt that it existed. But I had a copy of it.
That's weird. Well, I just heard about literally 2 weeks ago, CNET, which was our competitor. They had like news.com. If you remember
CNET,
that.
Sure, it was a big website for technical news reviews.
Well, right. Well, they deleted thousands and thousands of their old articles. Yeah, just the other day. So
but did the Internet Archive pick up that?
They have problems too. I mean, they can't archive everything. I mean, basically, when people say, "Oh, on the internet it's forever," it totally is.
No,
I've seen so much stuff disappear.
No, there's a quad tetrad, McLuhan tetrad, and they do one for the computer. I can probably find it. I know what book it's in, and it's perfect memory. Preserved forever is one of the results of the tetrad, where you ask, what does it preserve? What does it retrieve? What does it reverse? What does it obsolesce? And what does it transform? I think are the 4 points of the tetrad that Eric and Marshall worked out toward the end of Eric's life. And they did hundreds of these tetrads, and one was for the computer. And it was like perfect memory, indelible, and whatever, except if it's deleted, except if you lose it, except if it's altered, except if you can't find it again. So it seemed like one thing at the time, and then it became another thing.
Well, that's one of the properties of digital information, is that it's completely alterable, and it's easily deletable.
And fleeting,
very fleeting.
And fleeting.
Like a river.
Yeah, I mean, I know now to at least screenshot the URL and what the front page looks like, even if I'm in a rush, just to get some. I may have the screenshot record, the unofficial world record for making. Nice. I probably make 50 a day.
Well, that's the art of the future. So what you are doing is literally the art of the future.
Screenshotting.
I mean, absolutely. I think Brian Eno observed something like with all sorts of, with any sort of technology, like a VCR, VHS tape, or with 8-bit audio. Well, 8-bit computer sounds like junk, but the junk is the nostalgia.
Yeah.
And the junk, grainy film, you want the grain. In the future, hey, let's do this grain. So you got these screenshots. And give it 5 years, it's going to look so different. 10 years, but
they look good on my Mac Retina screen.
Right, but the actual view, the portal that you are saving now is going to be so transformed in 10 years. You cannot get back except through your screenshots.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm going to get up and can I show you something?
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
So in the early 90s, I was writing poems.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, from like I kind of started in 86 and maybe had a good 10-year run before the horoscope kind of took over my poetic mind. But I have more of these, like 3 times this amount, perfectly preserved drafts of poems. Mm-hmm. This one of my favorite cut and paste covers I ever did.
Oh, wow.
So I was using high-end photocopiers, and
yes.
This unfolds around the whole book. It wraps around the whole book. So I was, while you're doing all that digital stuff, I am really digging the beauty of paper.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And somehow I cannot tell you how this survived, living in 5 countries and many upheavals and disturbances and not being properly kept in binders.
Well, it's excellent that it exists.
And I went through, I showed up, it was on Saturday before this whole Trump fiasco. And I had just the most lovely, calmest day. And I have this beautiful storage facility, kind of half an hour down the road that I get super cheap, and it's not on a floodplain.
Oh, nice.
And nobody even knows it's there. They just drive by it like it's, like it's a garbage can on the side of the street or a tree or something. And I was in the perfect calm of my storage unit, digging these out of the files, thinking, all right, I need to reconnect with who this person is.
That's amazing. You were doing that Saturday?
Yeah, that's what I was doing Saturday.
Wow.
And then I came home, and the next thing I knew, I was thrust into the digital mirage of Trump getting grazed, and it took me a day and a half. I'm looking for the chart. It took me a day and a half to figure out that it didn't happen, that he didn't get shot.
Really? I want to read your stuff because I'm not a political person at all.
I've got a new podcast. I put out a new podcast tonight.
I'm going to check it out. Oh my gosh.
Nailing it. Yeah.
Well, being shot looks amazing on him. And
yeah.
No, I didn't write that. Some guy named
That's
Sam.
good though. Good. Great writer steal. Great writer steal.
Exactly.
I can't say that.
And the best get away with a heist. Okay. Like the Lufthansa in 78. But I like to think if Andy Warhol was around, he would have said that too. I just love that line because
the problem is that if you look carefully, you want to just do a quick check of this?
Sure.
Just for shits and giggles, we'll do another screen share. All right, so I'm not. Hope the podcast probably won't start. I go to more screen share. Let's go. This is it. Good. I'm going to share Substack. Now, how do I see what's being shared? Does it give me an on-air view of what's being shared? Let's go to the chart. Is this taking up most of the screen?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
So
you need to X out of that. There you go.
This is the chart is a big crosshairs. And it took me, that's actually not that long, but it took me a day and a half to actually crack this chart. The chart is speaking in cryptic language, but then it becomes syntax. You use syntax to crack it. It's not random. You're using very strict syntax.
Mm-hmm.
The houses all have a meaning. The planet that rules that house represents that meaning, and so forth. But let's go to this alleged injury shot. Did it get bigger?
Yes, it did.
All right. So if they're claiming that a chunk of a high-powered rifle blew off a chunk of his ear. The ear is loaded with blood vessels. It would have absolutely pierced a blood vessel. He would be covered in blood running down, not up. It would not be defying the laws of gravity. And that ear looks pretty well intact. It does not look like it was hit by an AR-15 shell. And then it's already coagulating? This is only 90 seconds in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's coagulating. The blood does not coagulate. And you would think that one of those Secret Service guys is an EMT. They probably are all EMTs of some kind. They'd be applying compression to the injury, but no, they stop. They expose him. They're doing a circle and move maneuver, it's called, where the agents circle him and become a human shield. Right. And then they're supposed to go very fast off the stage. No. Right. They stop, and one agent bends down, and he's again exposed. They don't know if there's a second sniper. They've had the first snipers neutralized. Right. They say all clear. Sniper. Well, they don't know. There was just a hail of gunfire a minute ago in a stadium. They had 50,000 people there. They weren't expecting it the first time, and then all of a sudden, they're like all clear, and then he steps up and he waves and he pumps his fist and says, "Fight, fight, fight."
Oh, it's absolute drama.
Absolutely ridiculous from a security standpoint, and from drama, that's great. It's fabulous. It's a
fabulous photo. That one photo, the guy who took it, I was looking into that. That was amazing. And just
this is Doug Mills.
That one right there.
My favorite photographer, one of my favorite photographers ever, who then also allegedly catches the picture of the projectile.
Oh, yeah, right.
Now, it would ruin my love of Doug Mills if I knew he was involved in a journalistic fraud like that.
Right. Because
if they weren't shooting live rounds at the candidate, there's not going to be a projectile to photograph.
Correct. And if there were live rounds, the interesting thing about it, it's not something that I understand how it could be faked, because 1 millimeter and it goes between getting grazed and getting offed.
Blown up like Kennedy's head.
Absolutely.
And what was the destiny of that projectile? If you draw a line from the position of the sniper to Trump's ear and you extend that line, where does it go? Where does it land? There are people all around in those phony grandstands where they have the grandstand. This is some advent of, I don't know when they invented this, where they put a crowd behind the guy so you're not looking at like a wall. Right. At some point, they moved an audience behind the political speaker. This was a thing. This is not things were not always like that. That came upon us one day, where there was an audience behind the speaker. This is more exciting.
It's the evolution of optics. Yeah, right. And in this one,
yes,
there's that. Do you know Vincent Fusco? I believe his name is the guy in the top hat in the background. People have conspired. They've said, "Oh, this is Robert F. Kennedy or John F. Kennedy Jr." But it's it's this guy who lives in Pennsylvania. But the funny thing about it is he doesn't react at all. Everyone else is on the ground and he's just casually sitting there. That's very odd to me.
Yeah.
The whole thing is like a movie. And if you're not writing the script, there's just really no way we can make explorations. We could try to decode stuff, but I don't know who's writing the script.
It falls apart fast. But
it's all fascinating.
And it's not that good of a script. But the fact that in my podcast today, I said, all right, either it's real blood or fake blood. Everything turns on that one fact.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's possible they cut him with a razor blade, but I don't think anybody wants. He wouldn't do. He's so squeamish. They just put makeup on him. Could you imagine? Wow. The guy washes his hands 14 times a day. So then that's now digital, right? After 9/11, that was the big turning point in the digital environment.
Oh, it absolutely was. And it was interesting. It was the end of postmodernism, because that building that was built, that was the height of postmodernism, the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And I mean, just look at it. It was the most magnificent piece of postmodern architecture.
Yeah.
And it literally comes crumbling down on our television screens. And that was kind of the end of TV, because after that, everybody got their news online.
Yeah.
I mean, if you talk to someone who sees something, quote, on TV, you're dealing with a 20th century mindset right now, because nobody gets it from TV anymore.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And that's why I call my radio program a radio program, even though it's not usually on terrestrial radio. Right. Pieces get picked up by Pacifica, but if MSNBC is not on TV, they're coming across the internet, but it's TV.
Mm-hmm.
Call TV.
Right.
So, Mark Stallman calls it pretend radio. I'm not that cynical because I know that basically everything now is carried by the internet. But we could talk about this in the time remaining. McLuhan over and over again talks about the way that media environments transform the self, the self concept. We become different people as the media environments evolve. Each new environment creates a different kind of person. Analog man, digital man, for example.
Right.
Typographic man versus auditory man. It's a complete shift of consciousness. And he saw the illiteracy coming.
Yes.
I mean, this is why you're something of the Friendster civilization of print, right? Kerouac invents the scroll. He takes a roll of paper and he hangs it on the wall above his typewriter. So he's not constantly interrupted by changing the sheet.
Right. His dad was a printer, so that's where he got the idea.
He found he got a 8-inch roll of paper, and he could just keep on going, sniff a little speed, and that's it. You write your book in 5 days, basically. Is what.
Black coffee was his choice, actually.
Coffee. Yes. So that was that was visionary in a way. But you are really a typographic man becoming the content of the internet.
Right. Filling up Emacs buffers. Emacs is my editor of choice. It's been for many years, but the buffer is endless. It's endless. It's as big as your hard drive. And even if you have a 100 meg hard drive, which is absolutely nothing, you can't even find that anymore.
No.
But you could write for the rest of your life in plain text and not fill it up.
No,
so
never.
We have eternal buffers. Basically, our problem, Werner von Braun said, the problem isn't space, it's time. And our problem is time.
Yeah.
Getting everything done in the time we have.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely a new environment. And that's where Kerouac was going with his scrolls. He was exploring and trying to get into this new environment, which is what you have to do as a writer. You're looking both forward and backward and recording basically the emotions you feel. And we are definitely in a new environment now. I mean, everything from the radio to books, it's all been swallowed up by the internet. Websites are more important than books. They're more important than radio. Like, who's going to tune in to you? Well, they'll use a website. Who's going to read this book? A lot of times for most of my writing, you'll use a website. You'll probably go on my Substack. Websites and the web and the internet has swallowed it all up.
Well, and even websites have been rendered obsolete by social media.
Correct.
Which stupids everything down. I mean, I was appalled the first time I heard of Twitter.
Oh,
it was almost like I had shoved my finger down my throat. I thought it was that disgusting. 140 characters? What are you kidding me? I mean, and it really
new mass media,
and it really did ruin that. And I consider that to be a medium change, not a content change. To restrict the format to 140 characters is environmental. It shifts the entire environment, therefore shifts the way people think and feel and who they think they are.
Correct.
But you're there, a print person reading Kerouac hanging out with Ginsberg. That's the cat's meow. At the beginning of all this, he's analog man.
Right.
He's typographic man, making these beautiful designs on the page with his poems. It's beautiful to look at the printed page. I would never want to read Ginsberg on a computer, but then you're personally becoming the content of the new medium. How would you say you changed personally in doing that?
Well, I changed because I saw that like the printed page is gone. Now, if you want to hear a new poem, you're going to hear it with your ears. It's going to be someone reciting it on YouTube or something like that. Because back then, if you're reading a poem and it's 1960, you're reading it on a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. But paper is over with. I mean, obviously, there still is paper. When a medium is obsolete, it's still around. It's just been eaten up, and we look at it differently.
Well, it's ubiquitous. Obsolete means ubiquitous in McLuhan's terms.
Correct. Very good.
But I have some damn nice printers back there because I have Epson 16, whatever they are, the biggest eco tanks. Mm-hmm. I have 2 of them.
Oh, nice.
Just to be sure, but I'm kind of clinging to the past. But I'm going to be able to self-publish new poetry books. on those printers. They have
Yes.
they have a new
Hard
job.
copy books.
And I'm going to retrieve that part of my soul that I left behind as the digital age, grew.
Right.
And I've got my analog guitar amp and my analog pedal board and my ordinary, single coil pickup guitars. That's beautiful stuff. It's good. I can't imagine you not.
I'm surrounded by that stuff. And I do have an HP LaserJet 4M Plus, which was a 90s classic. And I'm holding on to that one too.
Does it run?
Oh, absolutely.
I
mean,
how do you fill it? How do you get drums and cartridge and toner?
Up until fairly recently, it was pretty easy. You just go on eBay and you buy a secondhand, whatever. If the toner
and just cannibalize it,
just cannibalize it, get something new. But it's not so easy anymore. So I've been thinking about that. I'm like, there's going to be a day where that sucker isn't going to run anymore.
Well, the toner, you can drill the cartridge and blow it in, basically.
Yeah. People have done that. I don't have the time.
But the drums, whatever you call it, the drums are very sensitive.
Yeah, like the fuser and stuff.
Those photoelectric drums.
The
fuser, that's important too. That bakes it onto the page.
Yep.
That can go out. I was looking through my poems and I found these little white dropouts in some of them, which was I had like an NEC printer that I convinced them to send me a new one, but it was making dropouts. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, that was such a big problem. That was such a big problem for me at the time because I needed my pages to look perfect. I was publishing them.
and now that's the charm of the medium.
Yeah.
The dropouts on that.
Yes. Well, it certainly places it in the Friendster, in the Trapped in Amber. That's such a brilliant video. I will link it from this YouTube, which we probably can put this on YouTube because we're not mentioning any digital viruses or anything like that. Another conversation that we can have if you like doing this. I think this is great fun. I will tell you that Planet Waves, my group of publications, has never given up the original. We have to have a subscription fee. I wish I didn't have to have that, but I have to pay for this and the electric bill. But in the spirit of what I'm writing and how I'm writing it, and the pure passion and love I work at the speed I work, that's Internet 1.0. That's like, I'm writing this, I can share this immediately. I can do this podcast, I can share it immediately.
Right.
And so I think
to be able to do that.
What's that?
It's great to be able to do that too.
It's great. Oh, sure. When it's for artists, it's the most incredible thing ever if you still remember to get your hands in paint.
Sure. And I mean, we feel like, in many senses, we live in a dystopia. We live in a dying civilization and et cetera, you can say. But it's also never been greater. It's never been a greater time to be an artist because you can do so many things so easily now.
But here's the problem. Everyone feels small. I'm sure that great big rap stars feel like, God, this other 10 rappers are bigger than me. Mm-hmm. And so I've been working with that lately, and a lot of people think I'm a really big internet star. People really think that I'm famous, and to them, I am. And I recognize that that's a lot of how I handle myself in the environment, and I'm conscious of my presentation. I'm talented in a diversity of ways, but in truth, I'm very small. I'm happy if Planet Waves FM gets 1,000 listens. That's like an exciting week in the realm of YouTube and all these Apple podcasts and stuff like that. So I'm absolutely tiny, but I'm not letting that in any way shape my sense of the beauty of what I'm doing.
Absolutely. And you never know what's going to happen in the future.
You don't. No. I've been in the New York Times 7 times. I've been in the New York Times 7 times. And you can get one little touch on the head with the fairy's magic wand and boom. Right. So when I had a bigger staff, I would drill them and say, you don't know where we're going to be. We're doing this to the publication quality standards of the Wall Street Journal. We are proofing everything 3 times. We are not putting mistakes in this. We are fact checking. I still have proofreader fact checkers working for me.
Excellent.
Because you want to be ready to scale in that moment.
Right.
So I go for my low production value setup, but that's intentional. It's slightly campy, but the audio is good. The audio has to be good,
That's-
or
that's very important.
it's very
Right.
painful if the audio's not good. You can handle scratchy video, but sometimes the scratchy audio is cool too. You must be familiar with Boards of Canada.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So their whole thing is they make their sound like shitty broken analog gear.
Right.
I fucking love it. I can just play it for weeks on end. It's so good.
Well, do you ever listen to much vaporwave on YouTube?
No,
type
but
in
I think I've met my
vaporwave.
ambient music advisor. Would you please sign up as the ambient music advisor?
Right. Yeah, you would probably love it. And I'm glad I'm coming through because, like I said, I'm using this vintage electro voice for the first time today. So
A vintage Electro Voice microphone. What's it look like?
660. Let's see if I can tilt it down. Here it is.
All right. It's got a transformer. It's not that different than mine.
Yeah, no, it's not, but it works. It's good. It's cool.
Yeah, no, it's a dynamic mic, right?
Right.
Yeah, I like them much better than condenser mics for voice.
Interesting. For voice. Okay.
Yeah, condenser mics are great for piccolos, and I've got a Shure KSM 32.
Oh, yeah.
Two of them. You can yes. What?
Yeah, I've got a couple of those. Yeah, and you can.
They go from kick drum to piccolo in the same microphone, but I don't like how my voice sounds on it.
Mm-hmm.
I had a show that was split. Part of it was on the KSM 32. Part of it was on the on the RE20. I'm like, it sounds so much better on the dynamic mic. I call it a big, fat, cozy magnet right in front of me.
That mic's great. It sounds like radio.
It sounds like radio. That's the idea. Yeah. But Tom York loves it too. He records songs on it. Have you ever seen him holding it like it's a stage mic?
No, I haven't. That's fascinating.
No. Yeah, there's a
lot of good stuff.
I think I think that Radiohead is best of breed.
Mm.
Like they're like kind of like the last rock band as far as I'm concerned. They're full strength. Never sold out for a second. Never attempted to be commercial. No.
Right. They were probably the end, but rock and roll itself, it is a 20th century movement.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and it means sex to rock and roll is fucking. And that's very much a 20th century movement. Also, people have forgotten that, they have to remind people what these things are and tell them about it. So, wow. So what a sense of time passing. I mean, and you introduced me to a whole world. When I realized that I was doing this, I was making these paper cutout, designs, using copiers and rulers.
Oh, that's cool.
And I still work at a desk. Maybe there's some people who do, but I still work at a desk with a cutting mat.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I have razor blades, which I much prefer to X-Acto knives because you have much more control over the razor blade. Mm-hmm. And I've got rulers, and I work at an old school design desk. I don't think that what's come along is necessarily more creative or better, but I want to be reminded at all times of paper and printing process.
So do I. I'm very much into the typographic process, and even though I'm looking towards the future and I'm trying to meld and make the future, so much of my stuff, it's all old analog stuff, from the guitars to, again, like you're saying, with the razor blades and the cutting mat. I do a lot of that stuff with cut up collage, and even with photography and painting, just taking digital photos of that and then reprinting it and then reworking it through the whole system. But there's something about that tactile art that is actually very beautiful and very conducive towards other types of creative thinking that you don't always get if you totally eschewed that.
Well, we're three-dimensional beings, and I think that our bodies are three-dimensional. Our bodies are living in meat space here, as they used to call it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's it's important to stay there. These I have a supply of these Planet Waves journals
nice.
that nobody's really interested in. I have these awesome rolling ball pens. I can't give them away.
Oh, wow. What? Does nobody write anymore?
Well, everyone's on tablets and things like that.
Yeah, right.
They were designed for, subscribe and get see the emboss, very subtle.
Yes. Oh, that's cool.
Right. Not very glary, but it's there, but you barely notice it. And now it's like no one's really interested. But I think paper is beautiful, and
I love it. I got a giant chest full of all my notebooks, and I always carry a tiny little notebook wherever I go, because in terms of input devices, nothing for me has been faster than just if I'm scrawling something than just a pen and a little notebook. I've tried everything. Audio is good for some things, but then
I can't take notes in audio.
Oh gosh.
No, you can't search it. You can't leaf through it real quickly, and you can't doodle. What I love
you can't doodle it, right? You can make.
But this is why I love these charts. I mean, I encourage all any astrology followers or students, whatever you call them, to work on paper. So my charts always end up looking like this.
It's like a mandala.
It is your personal mandala. And then when I'm doing my prepared readings, like I'm doing, this is for the one I'm going to do tomorrow for Capricorn. I'm going to talk about this chart for an hour. I summarize the chart, like a series of charts like this, into one very succinct notation. If you're listening in the audio part, you can't see all this, but the video will be all over the place. And then I can talk easily, comfortably for an hour and a half about this. There's so many interrelations.
Well, it's interesting. It looks like there's a tetrahedron right in the middle, a 4-dimensional tetrahedron. Yeah. Just because of the way the lines are with the circle in the center.
And like there's a crosshairs in the middle of the part of Trump getting shot. Oh my God! This is the yes.
It's fascinating times. I mean, that stuff, I would like to write about that stuff, because like I admired Hunter S. Thompson for a lot of his life, a lot of what he did, especially his early writing, and he was really into politics, and I'm not really into that. I feel like someone said back in the 80s, Washington is like Hollywood for ugly people, or show business for ugly people, but. Yeah, there's no answers to it. For me.
Yeah, and they're equally greedy. But Thompson, I have a very hard time reading Thompson. But
really,
yeah, maybe I'm more of a Tom Wolfe reader. I absolutely fell in love with Tom Wolfe, and people say, "Oh, there's better writers," but I thought there's something I just absolutely loved about his slightly conservative viewpoint.
He was popular and literate at the same time. People hated it because he wrote popular books, but they weren't junk books. They were
fucking
literate.
Funny. He is very, very funny.
Yeah.
Plus, he was friends with Hunter. You know, all the acid test scenes were reported by Hunter. Hunter liked to throw his body into the action. That's what I absolutely loved about Hunter. The scene in Fear and Loathing on Las Vegas on 72, where he's at the convention, he somehow gets a delegate. I have some trouble with his writing. Maybe I wouldn't if I read him now, but he's on the campaign. He's on the convention floor. Mm-hmm. And everyone's cheering Nixon, and he's right on the campaign on the convention floor with them, cheering and going completely berserk, cheering for Nixon. And I'm like, why is that journalism? Why is that actual objective journalism? Because he's throwing his body in and experiencing.
He's trying to get the truth. That's the thing I admired about him, at least for most of his life. He cared about the truth and the reportage of the truth. And that really, most of the new journalists, Tom Wolfe wrote that book, The New Journalism, all about this. Yeah. And here he is throwing himself in there. And you say, well, how is that journalism? But he was trying to get the truth of the absurdity of the situation. Yeah. And he did that. That's the only way you can do it, is just dive in. It takes courage, the kind of courage that Hemingway knew. And that's what Hunter had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the end of his life is very sad. And I think there's a limit to the drugs. I think that they are shooting the dragon's blood, which always gets you.
Right. It's not good. It ruined him. Like if you read his stuff, I feel like when he really did the drugs, there was definitely a decline in his prose, and he lost a lot of things morally. And I don't like that. It's a shame, but I still I can't speak bad about what he did. He created great art. Yeah. And that is to be admired.
Yeah. And I can't expect artists to be perfect, but I try to choose ones who are good examples.
Absolutely.
I think it's very important,
it is.
To have, and suicide is not a good example.
No, murder.
You think he was killed?
Well, he killed himself. If he killed himself, that's murder.
Right.
It's very sad.
Yep. Yeah, we're here to live, I think. And that does take guts.
Right. And so does suffering. Suffering takes guts too.
How would you say that? How can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's not something that's fun, or it's not having a fun time or a party, and it takes guts, it takes courage to have to live through that. And remember, the Buddha said all life is suffering. Life is a courageous act if you do it right.
Yeah, and it's easy to numb out.
Yeah, very easy.
I mean, it's never been easier.
Which is why we need good role models, and which is why we need heroes. And heroes is the backbone of all great literature, which is why there's been so much trouble in literature for decades now, because the hero was replaced with the anti-hero. And I'm interested in that too, because you look even in other forms of entertainment that are entertaining, like The Sopranos and television. I've recently gone through all that, and on my channel I've been interviewing people. I interviewed Vincent Pastore, who was one of the main leads, and every person in that series, every character was an anti-hero. They're all villains. They're all creeps, horrible people. You don't want to be like any of them, but it's entertaining. It's great. But still, literature, there's always a hero somewhere. And to get that heroic element, that's the core of great literature.
Mm-hmm.
And we've lost that for many years.
You mean, who's an example of an anti-hero that I might recognize?
Well, probably the first big popular one might have been Holden Caulfield. Was kind of an anti-hero, but certainly Bret Easton Ellis, all of his characters, they're all horrible and Less Than Zero. American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, he's no hero. And it just goes on, You mean things centered around somebody who's just plain evil? Pretty much, or just not moral, or just not right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like we're afraid of positive examples.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm inspired to invent a new zine.
Yeah, with razor blade and
with razor blade and
toner.
I'm going to type it in probably on this computer.
That's cool.
My vintage Mac Pro, and I'm going to retrieve my Mac UCX out of that storage unit and see if it starts up again. I'll just hope it doesn't burn up. See if it starts up. Should plug it into somebody else's outlet. Good. Well, listen, this has been tremendous fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much. I will leave. Email me all the contact information that you want. We'll put a couple of videos in. This deserves to go out as its own thing. So I'll put this out as its own thing, Substack, YouTube. It's certainly a nice, colorful, engaging video.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like we could just talk on and on about all these subjects and then see where they all connect, because they all do kind of intertwine in their own weird way.
Well, look, you're invited. What I love about what we're talking about is that it's we're talking about art. We're not talking about how to be a better person. We're not talking about how bad things are. We're not talking about the problem of evil. We're talking about how to devote your life to creating beauty and having fun.
Right. Exactly.
And by some miracle, this is still allowed some places. You got to claim it for yourself, though. You do. You really have to grab it. You can't wait for somebody to give you permission. To create and to have fun, and right at the point where you think they're going to kick the door in, where you think, what is there's that beautiful Fertile and Getty poem, what will my sister think, and what will the little teddy bear think, and she's fucking her boyfriend. What will they all think? Who cares what they?
Who cares? Absolutely, who cares? Yeah, yeah. First thought, best thought, and that's your thought. You've got to get it out.
Yeah. Well, good. A pleasure, an honor.
Likewise. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll catch you a little further on down the road.
Okay.
All right.
Talk. Thanks.
Lots of love.
Bye-bye.
Bye
You
for
too.
now.
Bye-bye.